Welcome to this Friday's Legislative Update webinar. My name is Patty Movale. I'm the Executive Director for the League of Oregon Cities. Quick housekeeping, this is probably at this point meaningless for most of you since you regularly join the call, but please make sure that you're muted and you stay muted unless you are specifically asked by an LOC staff person to unmute yourself. Additionally, remember we hold questions and answers all the way to the end of the program. So if you have questions and you're afraid you'll forget them, just drop them in the chat. We'll do our best to take questions in the order in which we receive them when we get to the Q&A portion of today. And if you have not yet done so, we do ask that you change your screen name to include the city that you represent. We do our best to make sure that we call on city members before non-members when we get to the Q&A portion. We do have a pretty extensive legislative update today. We're going to cover 7 key bills. Again, that's what we'll cover in our opening remarks. If there are bills we have not specifically discussed that you have questions about, you can certainly ask for information on those bills during the Q&A portion. But for those who like to keep track of where we're going, during today's legislative webinar, we will discuss House Bill 3962 that deals with flexibility for local transient lodging taxes. House Bill 2025, which is our long-awaited proposed 2025 transportation package bill. House Bill 2803, which relates to a water resources department fee bill. House Bill 1153, which deals with water right transfers. House Bill 5011, which is the finalized housing budget. Senate Bill 916C, which provides unemployment benefits for striking workers. And we will conclude with Senate Bill 238A, which relates to the use of drones for public safety purposes. Again, we'll keep questions and answers till the end, but we're going to dive right in today. We're going to start with Jenna. Most of you should be familiar with Jenna. She is our tax and finance lobbyist. She's been working all session to secure you some flexibility for transient lodging taxes. We are now working with House Bill 3962. Jenna, I think you might have good news to share. What do we have?
I do have good news. Thanks, Patty. So House Bill 3962 passed out of House Revenue Committee yesterday with a -14 amendment. Thank you, everyone who's been continually bugging your legislators and House Revenue members. I don't stop that. Please continue that. But before I go too far into the action alert portion of this, which you can also see in the bulletin, let me describe where we're at as far as amendments go, because the -14 was posted yesterday and then passed yesterday. So the -14 amendment will change the 70-30 split, where 70% of post-2003 revenues have to go to tourism promotion and tourism related facilities and 30% is discretionary, to a 40-60 split where 40% has to go to tourism related facilities and tourism promotion, and 60% can be discretionary. So we doubled our discretionary funds in the post-2007 split. But wait, there's more. Local jurisdictions who were grandfathered in at a higher percentage. So if you have a higher percentage than 40% going towards tourism prior to 2003, you can actually move down to the 40-60 split as well. So it kind of opens up a lot of flexibility for most people. Transient lodging tax statutes are very murky and cause a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of opposition. And I heard a lot from the House Revenue members on the record yesterday that this bill has had people from all sides calling them and blowing up their phones. So it's working, but always trying to remind folks that it's the visitors who pay. Nothing in the -14 hurts any city who has a sweet deal pre-2003. So if you have 100% of your lodging tax going to your general fund pre-2003, this bill does not harm you at all. It can only help you. So my asks of everyone today is please call your House members. The bill will be going to the House floor any day now. And I think we have the votes there, but let's take the belt and suspenders approach where we make sure we have the votes. So continue to tell people to support House Bill 3962. And then on the Senate side, this is going to move quickly because we have 2 weeks left in session. So please call your senators and start briefing them on transient lodging tax and why you support it and why they should support it. If you have any senators on the Senate Finance and Revenue Committee, please ask them to schedule the bill as soon as possible for a public hearing and work session. I'll put that note in the chat and then the members of the Senate Finance and Revenue Committee in the chat as well. But off the top of my head, that's Senator Starr, Senator McClain, Senator Patterson, Senator Meek, and Senator Taylor. So those are kind of the top priority targets, but every senator really does need to be talked to at this point.
Thanks, Jenna. Good work. I know it's been a long session on this one. We're still not done though, so please really hear Jenna when she says, we mean it. You have to keep calling. This is the farthest we've probably ever gotten on transient lodging tax reform as long as Jenna and I have both been at the league. So please don't drop the ball now. Hang on one second. I'm gonna mute. Okay. We're going to move on to Jim. We'll go from transportation dollars to maybe giving you guys some additional transportation dollars in terms of where we are. So let's keep talking about funding. Jim, House Bill 2025 is the transportation bill we've waited for. You had hearings all this week. Where's the bill stand and what do you need from members?
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Hello, everybody. So next step for us in this process is going to be basically work session next week. I don't have a specific time yet, but they've already made a fiscal request on House Bill 2025. That is that transportation package moving forward. Good news today is after waiting for weeks, we also have some numbers to add to the mix. Are you getting background from me? I've got a contractor over here. Okay, fabulous. I'll keep going then. So bottom line for folks, House Bill 2025 has an estimated fiscal year 2030 revenue distribution to cities of $235 million. So the comparison point here right now is that for this current fiscal year that we are in, the distribution is $238 million. So this package is going to have a fundamental, potentially generational impact on a lot of cities out there by having a tremendous amount of additional revenue to spend, to invest in your local streets and transportation projects. This is something that we are in a terrific place at this point. There's going to have to be obviously vote process here over the next couple of weeks with the session, but to be at a point where we have this scale of investment pushing out to local governments, as well as our county partners, tells me that all of that advocacy work that we have been pitching here for the last several months is working. Your constant contact, being able to make the case for the poor street conditions that your city streets are in is all working. So this transportation package really does get back to the basics. It is kind of a meat and potatoes type of transportation bill where not a lot of that extra revenue is going to bright and shiny new projects like it has in the past transportation effort. It's certainly multimodal because we also are going to be looking at significant investments in public transit. It was pretty amazing this week with one of the hearings that they had focused on transit investment. And there are a lot of communities out there I didn't realize actually have shuttle services up until some of that hearing. So a lot of rural communities took advantage of the 2017 money. And that means Eastern Oregon, that means the coastal strip, that means up and down the Willamette Valley, trying to connect communities that never had any kind of public transit before. The transit piece alone is going to be significant here by full implementation. Again, the way this transportation package is not everything comes out up front in terms of fees or tax increases. This is something that's feathered out over the next 4 to 5 years and is going to be a tremendous value for a lot of communities.
And thanks, Jim. Just to clarify, this is providing more money than what we currently have at the local level.
Correct. It almost is a complete match or effectively doubling what that revenue is at the local level. The bulletin article that's in place today actually has a estimated projection by city. So you can take a look and see what your fiscal year 2024 distribution was and what this is going to be in 2025. And again, that's just the new revenue that's coming forward. So pretty significant place to be at this point in time. I still expect some type of negotiation to be taking place to make sure that they can get a 3/5 vote through the process. But we're in a good place. And as you heard from Jenna, we're at a point now where you just need to keep that communication going. You need to keep the constant pitch to your legislators and making sure they understand how important this transportation package is to your community.
Thanks, Jim. Up next, we're going to pivot to LOC's water lobbyist, Michael Martin. Michael has two bills for us today. One's related to a water resource department fee, and the second is related to water right transfers. Michael, why don't we start with House Bill 2803, which is the fee bill, and then when you finish your update on that, go ahead and pivot to House Bill 1153 dealing with water right transfers.
Great, thank you, Patty. Yeah, Michael Martin, your water lobbyist here. So, quick update, House Bill 2803 is a water resources department fee bill. This is a fee-supported program, but at the start of this conversation with Water Resources Department, they wanted to raise these fees, a variety of fees, 135%. The league, along with other water users, found this totally unacceptable and opposed the bill. The bill was just passed out of the Natural Resources Subcommittee. There is a 50% reduction in some of those fees, and the dam safety fees stayed the same. It just was sent to the full Ways and Means Committee. There's some ongoing conversations about if there's going to be any sort of general fund to sort of backfill some of these fees. Like, again, we understand this is a fee supported program, but wanted to at least, put out the best effort to reduce some of these fees, from that 135% initial conversation. So no action required. Wanted to update you on that. And if some action is required at a future date, I'll, be happy to update you.
Hey,
The
Michael,
second
Michael,
oh.
I'm gonna interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
For those who may not have been tracking this, can you give me an example of the fee and how it would impact cities? Like, it is a fee that they're imposing upon cities for a permit. Why do cities care?
Yeah, so this could be, permits to appropriate or store water.
Okay.
Examining water storage applications or modifying a certificate of registration. So just a variety of fees that we come in contact with, dealing with water. So you don't have an analysis of on like every fee that's impacted by cities, but it's a kind of a large swath of fees at the Water Resources Department if you are doing any transactions with them.
Awesome. One other follow-up. When you said the bill that passed out of committee, came down 50%, is that 50% off the original proposed 135% hike or 50% off current fees?
Yeah. Great catch. Yeah. So that's like quick math, I don't know, like 68%. So yeah, it's not reduced to 50% increase. So it's probably like 68-ish% around there.
Okay. So they're still looking at an increase to fees.
Correct.
Just not
Yes.
as terrible.
Yeah, just not as bad. And I think, again, part of that conversation was we understand these are fee supported programs, but we think the 135% that they had initially suggested was unacceptable from our standpoint. So
thanks. And
Great.
House Bill 1153, what do you got on that one?
Yeah, I got a quick update. So this, just to make this point very clear, this was probably one of the biggest threat to municipal water rights that, folks who've been working in this longer than I have, like the last 10 years. This is a bill that we had a team of folks sitting around the table with the governor's office, negotiating any changes to water right transfers. And this effectively would have made it easier for cities to get sued in this process if they're transferring water rights, working on a project, for a new drinking water facility, moving a point of diversion for a seismic upgrade, anything like that, this would have been impacted. So as the bill stands right now, it was voted out of the Senate, and there is a municipal carve out in the bill as it stands. It moved the league to a neutral position. We were initially opposed, but now with the municipal carve out, we're neutral. And this bill with very short, limited time remaining in session is either going to fail or pass at this point. And part of what's complicated that recently is Senator Bonham put out a minority report on this, and that is just an administrative way to say this delays the bill getting to the next level in the process. So again, want to thank everybody. This was a huge effort. A lot of folks, city lobby, just to get to this point, that this didn't get forced upon us. And again, I cannot stress, like, everybody who was actively participating in this really made this possible, because this was a huge threat to municipal water rights. So
Thanks, Michael. Good job working that one. We're gonna go from water to housing. Alexander Ring is your housing and land use and homelessness lobbyist. Alexander, you've got information on House Bill 5011. It's a funding bill for housing. Can you provide more information on that and why cities should care, please?
This is primarily kind of an end of session update, and a big thank you to folks who reached out to their legislators last week. I know you heard from me on last Friday about the need to reach out to legislators on the need for shelter resources and some concerns about there not being quite sufficient shelter resources in the budget. The budget came out on Tuesday morning, and very happy to report that there's 204 million in shelter resources in the budget for this biennium. The governor proposed, and it was necessary for there to be 217 million to keep all shelter beds open for the next biennium. 204 is a little short of that, but definitely not quite as bad as folks thought. In terms of the rest of the housing spectrum, there are quite a lot of cuts across the board. More information is available on OLIS, and I will put some information in the chat about where exactly those cuts have occurred, but there's ongoing efforts to ensure that there are sufficient dollars for prevention of homelessness and rehousing of individuals in homelessness, because those budgets have seen up to 85% cuts. Continuing to work on that. And for those following development, we still do not have any information about when the development dollars, so LIFT, which is Article 11Q bonds, will be scheduled. So we're just sitting and waiting.
Thanks, Alexandra. We're going to wrap up today with Scott. Scott's our general government lobbyist. Scott has been working hard all session. We've got two bills, Scott, for you to update on. First is Senate Bill 916, which deals with unemployment insurance for striking workers, and then also Senate Bill 238 regarding drones. Why don't you take the striking workers provision first and then move to drones second?
Yeah, well, it was a long fight, and yesterday things didn't go our way on the Senate floor. We had a brief moment of optimism earlier this week, where the Senate failed to concur on the House amendments. We had, with all the Republicans voting no, and then four Democrats also voting in the negative to reject the conference committee report. Can't really comment on everything that went on behind the scenes or things I didn't witness, but the House Conference Committee adopted a largely performative amendment that limited the benefits to 10 weeks with no, so a striking worker could get 10 weeks of unemployment insurance as opposed to the full 26 weeks. The major concern to public employers was the front end waiting period, and that was not adjusted. So the amendment really doesn't do anything for public services. But it did pass on the Senate. I want to thank, it's now on the way to the governor's office. Every indication is that she intends to sign it. We are talking to our coalition partners, both in the public and the private sector, about our options going forward as we go into the rulemaking procedures and potential legal options. I do want to thank, in particular, Senators Solman, who was just a champion for public services and public interest on this bill, and Senator Golden also for voting no. Those no votes did preserve our ability to make an unfunded mandate challenge. It kept them from getting the supermajority. So we're not, we're not in a great position on this right now going into implementation, but I think I fully anticipate seeing litigation and other challenges and other conflicts with the existing federal law on that regulate how we administer unemployment insurance. So thank you to everybody who engaged with their legislators. I know this was difficult in some areas with some cities, but that's where we're at.
Thanks, Scott. And just to be clear, can you restate the two senators you'd like us to thank again so everybody can make note of it?
I think we can thank all the no votes on this bill. So all of the Republican caucus, and then Senators Solomon and Golden in the D caucus, who stuck with us the whole time. We thought we had four for a little while, but then four became two, and it was all over. I think it's really important when you're talking to your legislators that they understand the 10-week limit really does nothing for public services. The issue for us was the waiting period. We did offer an amendment. There were, despite what you may hear if you were talking to your legislators on this, there were procedural means at which to achieve a compromise. We had offered something similar to the Washington law, which was a 3-week waiting period and a 6-week cap on benefits. Maybe you could have done it in the conference committee, maybe not, but there were other bills that could have been used as vehicles. There were new bills that could have been introduced, all of which is well within the realm of possibility. So if you hear from your legislators that it was procedurally impossible to do likewise, that's simply not the case.
Thanks, Scott. And what do we need to know about drones and Senate Bill 916?
So Senate Bill 238, A
238,
is
sorry.
allows public safety use of drones. It's came out of the Senate on a came out of the Senate on a strong vote, got to the House and hit some snags. A lot of people are concerned about the situations that's occurring in Los Angeles right now and in other cities about police use of drones. I think the bottom line is all we're really asking for is to expand our use of drones to protect the public and law enforcement officers. A lot of the concerns that were brought up in testimony in the bill earlier this week really had nothing to do with the words that were actually on the bill. We can't spy on people. We have to use. We were asking for it to be used in times where there's an actual police call for service. Where it was necessary, we compromised as much as we could to get the amendment. Unfortunately, if you're trying to negotiate with people who are running ads against you at the same time, it gets a little bit complicated. Bottom line is, these are tools that have allowed police and fire agencies to save lives, monitor situations without the risk of escalation, and we've written in clearly and explicitly that we cannot violate anybody's rights. We don't need to put that in the law, but we did, just to make it very, very clear. We're talking about using these devices for in the public interest, not because we're going to spy on folks. I mean, I think a lot of people see drones in the air and they assume that they're owned by the government. And the reality is they're probably just either commercial or hobbyists.
Scott, where's the bill now?
The bill now is in House Rules. We think there are the votes on the floor. The question is whether or not leadership will let it get out.
Do you need anything from the members right now?
Yeah, I think if you're talking to your legislators this weekend or before the end of session, just tell them this is a tool that helps us protect people. It's safer to use a drone to track an eluding vehicle than a police car. That on its own should have gotten that bill out. But we're in some volatile times right now, and I understand that people are a little bit nervous, but this is a bill that's going to let us help people.
Thanks, Scott. And there's a question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and give it to you now since we're almost into Q&A. It's from Mayor Milch of Gladstone. and it's a good question, I should have caught it myself. There's probably people on the call who don't know what an unfunded mandate is and the steps we have to take to prove one. Can you briefly summarize what that is for anybody who's not familiar with it, please?
Sure. So the Oregon Constitution protects cities and counties against unfunded mandates from the legislatures, and those are defined as new programs or increased levels of service from existing programs. And we believe that the excuse me, and we believe that the legislature is, or that the legislation passed could constitute an unfunded mandate under the law. Ledge Council does disagree with us, but they're not our lawyers. And the way that will work is if the unemployment department sends a bill to a city to pay for the unemployment benefits of a striking worker, that city could then appeal to DAS, the Department of Administrative Service, to say, we believe this to be an unfunded mandate. DAS is required to form a committee that will consist of a representative from LOC, AOC, and DAS to hear the case. If that panel concludes that it's an unfunded mandate, then the city could then notify the agency that they are going to pay, I believe it's 5% of the cost, and the state can pick up the rest, or they can go pound sand. I don't think they said pound sand in their constitution, but that's what they meant.
Scott, AOC, just for those who may not be as familiar with acronyms.
Association of Oregon Counties, so our counterparts at the counties. And so I know which LOC employee would like to be on that panel, so I think our vote count's pretty good there.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe Patty wants to fight me for it. I don't know.
We're both equally crabby at the end of session, Scott.
Yeah. So that's how that works. There's a really great primer on this on the LOC's A to Z index.
And actually, Kevin, if you don't mind, behind the scenes, if you could go ahead and drop that resource in the chat before we leave today, that'd be great. We are going to pivot now to questions and answers portion. Scott, stay on because the first question in the chat is going to be relevant to your portfolio.
Yep.
But before I get to that specifically, just a reminder, if you have questions on anything you heard today or about any other issues, probably the fastest way to do it is put it in the chat. You can also raise your proverbial Zoom hand and we will call on you and ask you to unmute yourself. So this question comes from a city council member in Corvallis. It says, I've heard suggestions that the legislature might craft legislation to reverse a recent Oregon Government Ethics Commission ruling regarding meals and such for city employees and elected officials. Is there anything in the works and who should we contact? So before we start, Scott, can you, because I'm assuming not everybody's heard about this, can you very briefly say what happened with a recent OGEC ruling and what steps the league is taking to try and get a permanent reversal?
Okay. I will go through the timeline on this as efficiently as I can. Hopefully I'll get everything. For nomenclature purposes, this is referred to as the hot dog opinion. So if you hear us talk about that, this is what we're discussing. So what happened was City of Beaverton was going to have a team building event for their senior managers. The mayor of Beaverton wisely, and is a very common practice, sought advice, protective advice from the OGEC before inviting public officials to accept something that they didn't pay for. This is pro forma. It's very common for people to do this. We encourage it normally. The advice came back not what we were expecting, and that the food and beverages consumed by those public officials would have to be included as part of their official compensation package. That actually occurred last summer. The league crafted there are hierarchies of advice and opinion at OGEC. And so each level provides extra protection for the person if the advice comes out wrong. We call it safe harbor provisions. The league crafted a question and asked the full commission to overrule the executive director's advice. They failed to do so. And then one of the law firms that was involved in that, I believe it was Beery Elsner, put out their notice that this was now a formal opinion and that the food and beverage was now had to be part of your official compensation package. That's where we're at. This all took place very late in session, so we do not have a legislative fix to this. But what is in the works right now is the House caucus leaders, both Representative Bowman and Representative Drazen, are jointly asking Legislative Council to review the OGEC opinion. This opinion affects more than cities, impacts state agencies, the legislature, special districts and community colleges are actually in a world of hurt because their elected officials aren't allowed to have compensation package by statute. So they are looking at that, attempting to get an LC advice on this. And at that point, they would send a letter to the OGEC asking them to review. We are going to be doing an ethics work group going into the February session that will encompass a number of topics. This is one of them. So I would expect to see the serial meeting fixes lumped in with this. There's some funky stuff going on with executive session rulings from OGEC, the hot dog advice, a couple of other things that we would all expect as a package going into the February session. I think the legislature reacted poorly to that advice. Part of it was a timing issue in that if you followed some of the state scandals involving the expensive bourbon out of OLCC and with the former Secretary of State, so the commission ruled on those two cases in ways that a lot of people in the legislature felt was too lenient, and then they came around and said no hot dogs. So there's a lot of frustration there right now in the legislature with the OGEC, and I think we are going to have to bear with this for a little while longer, but I fully expect a package coming in February.
Thanks. So just if I'm going to summarize it quickly, Scott, we don't have a legislative avenue this time because the opinion came out in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
We are working to see if Legislative Council will do a different opinion to basically force the OGEC to revisit its bad advice. And if those don't work, if the OGEC won't change its mind, we'll be seeking a legislative fix in 26. Is that fair?
Yep. And we also are working with some municipal attorneys to fill vacancies on the current commission, which I think actually representation on the commission will solve a lot of our issues.
Perfect. Thanks. The next question we have is from Happy Valley. The question is for you, Jim, I believe, as it relates to House Bill 2025. And the question is, have we as a league taken a position or at least given any input on the $125 million Great Street Fund carve out in House Bill 2025, which I believe is the transportation package bill?
Yeah, no, thanks. Appreciate the question, Kevin. So yeah, we've certainly weighed in. We've supported that effort to get money into the Great Streets program, as well as Safe Routes. Those are two programs that are state funded, and they benefit cities greatly, the ones that at least are in the queue and can get some of those funding in their projects, and largely because these are safety projects. And that's been a big part of the overall advocacy from us as an organization, but also advocacy that was established by the Transportation Policy Committee that LOC has. So a lot of our work that has gone into this transportation package is really driven by some core principles that the Transportation Policy Committee has put together. And those principles include that safety aspects, and that's really where this both support for the Great Streets program as well as the Safe Routes to School and the overall package for that matter. So I testified Thursday evening, had a lot of members that over the course of the week were testifying on various subjects, and was complimented last night with a number of our cities that participated in that process. So yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for that update. We've still got time for questions, so if you have them, put them in the chat. There's a few updates I want to give. Some of them are actually related to these continued calls. So if you usually drop off, just hang on for 30 seconds and still feel free to keep adding questions. We're going to have 2 more webinars left throughout the session, so next Friday and the following Friday. Once the full session is done, LOC lobbyists are going to take some time. They'll work with LOC other staff, for example, our attorneys, and they will build basically a legislative summary report. We'll have a written report and then a follow-up webinar where we can answer all of your questions on all the things you are now required to do, opportunities that you may choose to avail yourself of, etc. So the next 2 Fridays for sure keep this on their schedule. And then later in the summer, towards the end of the summer, be on the lookout for an additional invitation to a webinar so you can get a full wrap-up And then you'll also have the legislative report. Also of note, during the third quarter small cities meetings, LOC lobbyists will be traveling across the state to give everybody an in-person legislative update. The league classifies small cities as any city with a population of 7,500 or less. If you have a population that is greater than that, you should still feel free and you are encouraged to attend the small cities event in your area so that you can go ahead and get the legislative update. If you don't know when or where those meetings are, if you go to the league's homepage, you can find a calendar of events and it will tell you when those small cities meetings are. You don't have to attend the one in your region. You're certainly welcome to attend any one that works best from your schedule. They do run from 11 to 1 p.m. I am seeing another question in here, Jim. It looks like it is for you because it's regarding House Bill 2025 again. The question is from Bend. It says, it appears most new safety funding is dedicated to great streets and safe routes, but little is available for ODOT to use on the state highway systems. Is that an accurate assessment of the bill?
No, not necessarily. So there's a couple of different things to recognize out of how we fund transportation investments in Oregon, and it's in some respects off the charts, way too complicated. So I will start really kind of with the state highway fund, and that's really kind of that core piece of revenue that we have a really significant sharing in, and that 50% that goes to local governments really is that core piece for local governments funding, and you folks have got the ability to put that into safety projects, potholes, and any number of different local type of transportation projects itself. ODOT has, I'll just say something similar. They have the ability to take half of that state highway fund and be able to dedicate it into their operations and maintenance. And I think part of what they have lacked in the past, and certainly you can see it driving on any number of the coastal roads or other places throughout the state, that they just haven't been able to keep up on some of the safety needs that are out there. So they're going to still have a dedicated amount of money that's going to be going specifically into some of those legacy problems that they've got out there that are really largely safety issues. But it's not, they don't necessarily have to be within the Great Streets or Safe Routes program is effectively what I'm saying. Those are really something that is very specific, something that streets get measured on a number of different elements or factors, and then they work their way into the queue effectively. And any city that's had a Safe Route to School type of investment or Great Streets program in the past can certainly tell you that those benefit them on that safety aspect, and that's kind of where they're targeted. But ODOT will definitely be spending money on safety for sure outside of these programs.
Thanks, Jim. If you've got other questions, drop them in. I have two other brief updates, and if we don't get questions from them, we can end at the end. The first is that the league is very much aware that a majority of our cities are probably experiencing budget shortfalls as they work to adopt their fiscal year 25-26 budgets. In recognition of that, we have increased the number of scholarships we are offering to our annual conference. The annual conference this year is happening at the Marriott Riverfront in downtown Portland from October 2nd to the 4th. If you are somebody who wants to attend that conference and you are concerned that either your city or yourself does not have funding to send you, scholarship applications are open now and they close July 7th. So if you are someone or you have people in your city who are interested in attending the conference, but you need scholarship dollars to do so, I encourage you to get onto the league's website now and fill out the scholarship form and submit it before July 7th. With that in mind, I know particularly if there are city recorders on the call, you are always anxious to know the registration deadline and opening for our conference so you can get in on the day of. We will be opening annual conference registration on July 15th. So mark your calendar for that date if you're looking to register. And then last but certainly not least, because I'm not seeing any more questions, we have partnered with the FCS group to provide system development charges training. It's a webinar-based training at a cost of $59. That training is happening on June 26th, so here in a few weeks, and we still have spots available. So if you or any member of your city needs help or assistance in understanding system development charges, please make sure that you go ahead online and get registered for that. I am not seeing any more actual questions in the chats. No virtual hands are raised. So we're going to call the meeting to an end today. Thank you for everything you do for your cities and your wider communities at Hall. And thanks for all the advocacy you've helped us with this year. You've got great lobbyists, but the legislature likes to hear from mayors, councilors, and city staff as well. So thanks. Have a great Friday. Have a good weekend. And we will see you here next week. Same time, same place.